All right, welcome back to another episode of the Four Wide Podcast. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard, Jonathan Williams, and Dan Kiley. Last weekend we couldn't put on a show. It was kind of difficult based on just game stuff, right? Like Wednesday or Sunday games went through the entire day from start to finish. There was at awkward times, so we couldn't do our normal evening show. Same kind of thing this week. Why we're doing it on a Saturday night instead of Sunday afternoon. Because those games are going to be going through weird times. There's only two games, so we figured we would give you a post from last week and a preview of next week as well, all in one tonight. And we'll go, probably won't be a super long show, but we'll give you everything that we have on these games coming up for tomorrow and a little bit from last week as well. So starting with last week, what game stood out to you guys the most? We'll start with you, Dan. What game stood out the most based on just the biggest surprise game from last week? Because there were some weird performances last week. I'll start by saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know where you're going to go, but I'm going to touch the Chiefs and the Jaguars. I thought that the Jaguars were a good story coming into the week. I didn't think that they'd be able to hang with the Chiefs. But as soon as Patrick Mahomes got hurt early in that football game, and a lot of credit goes to him, he came back in and played. I'm sure he has no feeling in that leg in the second half of that football game. I believe, what was the name of that numbing agent that was trending on Google? I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Anyway, the drug that they used to numb it up, it was trending on Google at halftime of that football game. But you got to give the Jaguars a lot of credit. They came out, they played hard. Trevor Lawrence did a really good job. If you compare that to the game the previous week, how awful he started and obviously put it together to come back and win it. But it ended up being a lot more of a competitive game. Is it more competitive because the Jaguars just played really, really well? Or was it competitive because Mahomes wasn't in the game? I don't know which way you lean. I lean towards, I think the Jaguars played really hard and had a good plan and executed really well. Obviously, having Mahomes is a great advantage, but you just can't chalk it up to that. But I was intrigued with that game. I enjoyed that game. It was a really good game, and it was not one of the games that I thought was going to be a good game. That's why I enjoyed it. Jonathan, what do you say, buddy?
Well, I think first off, a shout out has to be given to the Eagles just because they absolutely dominated the Giants.
Oh, yeah.
They've just been dominant all year long. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, they keep flying, they keep dominating, they keep cruising their way, and now they find themselves in the championship round, and they're 1 win away from being back in the Super Bowl. So, I mean, obviously, shout out to them. But the one that was most interesting to me was how much Buffalo struggled against Cincinnati, because it seems like every single year, and rightfully so. I mean, Buffalo's a really talented team. Josh Allen, all those offensive weapons, Stephon Diggs, they got a pretty solid defense out there. Like every single preseason, there's a lot of hype around Buffalo and the fact that they should be Super Bowl contenders, and they probably are one of the best teams in the NFL, but they keep coming up short. And now there's even questions about Josh Allen and maybe has he hit his ceiling, because he struggled a good bit this year. I think he led the NFL in turnovers amongst quarterbacks, didn't really have a solid touchdown to turnover ratio. And then Joe Burrow and the Bengals just keep winning, doing their thing in the playoffs. And this next matchup for them against the Kansas City Chiefs, which we'll get into a little bit, is really interesting to me. But yeah, I thought that would be a lot better game. I didn't think Buffalo would really struggle to move the ball as much as they did. I mean, scoring only 10 points against Cincinnati, that ain't going to cut it in the playoffs, especially not when your focal point of your team is supposed to be your offense and how you move the ball and whatnot. So that was the biggest shocker to me and the one that I really focused on the most.
Yeah, that was definitely the game that stood out the most to me as well, because we're so used to, Josh Allen being this like incredible superstar type player. The Bills having this incredible offensive performances at week in and week out and scoring 30 plus points a game, that kind of thing. And in the NFL, that can be kind of difficult overall. So going in and only seeing them score 10 points really did shock me. Another thing one thing to consider in this game was one team just ran the ball. We've talked about that so much on the show at this point, and it keeps coming back up as a topic point that's worth talking about. And again, this week, Josh Allen needed some help from his running game in a game where it's snowing like crazy. I know y'all probably watched that game as well, and it was snowing. It's nasty out. It's really hard to throw in that. Everybody's hands are cold. It's wet, all that kind of stuff. And when your team is only running for 64 yards and Josh Allen's the leading rusher with 26 yards on the ground, I mean, you have no chance of winning a game in the snow like that if that's the type of game you're going to be playing. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and I didn't touch on this game because I knew you were going to get to it, but that was one of my concerns too, Jeremiah, is that you are a team that is built to play outside in the weather, right? That's the idea. My
You're in
question
Buffalo.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. The GM of that team needs to be questioned because how do you not have an elite running game? I mean, did they really think that Cook was going to come in and be that bell cow to turn that running game over? If they did and he just hasn't worked out, I understand it. But my question, they need a big monster running back like a Derrick Henry, somebody like that. Granted, every team would like to
A
have
Derrick
Henry.
Henry, a Nick Chubb, like a big back that's
Yes,
going to be able to bully people kind of thing. You need up
correct.
there when you're going to have late games that are in the snow and stuff. You need a big
No.
bowling ball type running back. That's
But
what you need.
not even like, of course, the Derrick Henrys or the Nick Chubbs of the world. Just get you a Tyler Algier, like what the Falcons have, a guy that can follow up someone like Cordero Patterson that can come in. I know, Dan, you're going to roll your eyes.
Somebody that can run through people, and that's not
exactly.
who they have. They have Devin Singletary and James Cook, and neither one of those guys are running through players.
And James Cook was solid on the ground this year, but like Dan was touching on, like James Cook is not typically going to be your 20 carries a game or even like 18 carries a game type of guy. He's a guy that you feed, and once he gets hot, you just keep giving him the ball. Like that's the guy that you want when he gets things going. You just want to keep getting him the ball. He's not the guy where you're just force feeding him throughout the game, because that's not when he was successful at Georgia. Todd Monken was really good about spreading the ball around to him out in the slot, wherever you wanted to put him. They were just good at getting him the ball because that's what he does best. When he could get things rolling, then you want to feed him. So
the passing game was something he contributed so much in at UGA, more so than the running game like that, because the other backs at UGA would take care of like the carries between the tackles and everything. So once again, James Cook is not a between the tackle type running back, and that's exactly what you need in that type of weather game. And they just don't have it. They haven't had that guy like in a long time.
We just named all these running backs that teams would love to have, but you know who was 100% available and would have been a perfect fit for that was Zamir White. Zamir White was a pound it down your throat. I mean, they took the wrong Georgia back. Now, we all love James Cook. I mean, nobody's crapping on James Cook, but Zamir White fits more what they needed, and he was a better complement to Singletary than Cook is. So,
and the funny thing too is James Cook would have fit better in the Raiders type offense since they already had Josh Jacobs. Like those two teams both drafted the wrong running back from Georgia.
So why is this so hard for NFL GMs? I mean, like we can sit here and we can nail this stuff, and we're not wrong.
I don't know if we could nail it.
I don't know about y'all, but
I
don't know about y'all, but my Madden dynasties are running 8 years deep. So I mean, it ain't that hard, guys. Like I'm hitting on all my draft picks on Madden. Like it ain't that hard. Like right?
Yeah.
Especially when they got sliders.
Yeah, the sliders. But another game that is worth talking about as well, because I don't know about you guys, I didn't look at either one of these teams. Like they both had good defenses, don't get me wrong, but I don't look at either of these teams as being a defensive football team from top to bottom. Like that's what you get from them week in, week out. But looking at the Cowboys and San Francisco game was such a low scoring game. It was a defensive battle, and it honestly, it was ugly football. Like the whole game just was ugly football. You didn't get anything like crazy on offense from either side of the ball. Like you're looking at Dak just threw for 206, 2 interceptions, a touchdown. And I mean, he looked like he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn throughout like 56 or 70% of that game. It felt like he just could not hit his, he was overthrowing people. He almost threw multiple picks outside of the 2 that he actually threw. And it just looked uncomfortable. And then Purdy didn't have a terrible game, but he didn't have any touchdown passes, only threw for 214, which was quite different from what we had seen from him in the past, which I will say this, Dallas definitely does have a decent defense overall. Like we do know that. I'm not saying they're a defensive sided football team all the time, but they do have a better defense, I would say, than San Francisco. And so maybe that contributed to it. But Dak overall, Dak was crappy. I mean, he just was terrible.
My favorite.
Sorry, Harrison, if you're watching this. I
was going to say San Francisco's got the best defense in the NFL.
They got a really good one. Good one.
But I guess I don't necessarily think of them as a defensive side of football because they're usually scoring 35, 40 points a game, it feels like. Like they're usually putting up points.
Because you got Kyle Shanahan calling up shots.
So with that, you don't necessarily look at them as being such a defensive heavy. Yeah. They're definitely a balanced team in that sense. That's what I meant by that. I'm not saying they didn't have a good defense, but I'm just saying.
My favorite part of that game was the final play of the game. It was what Dallas drew up for their final play of the game. What Kellen Moore drew up for the do or die, seasons on the line. We got to have it. Like we have to have it. This is possibly our last play of the game. And you run the wackiest formation. You spread everybody out. But you don't even put an offensive lineman as your only down lineman. You put Ezekiel Elliott, put him under center. And San Francisco literally is looking at it like, well, hell, we're just going to bull rush the dude. Like, what the heck? Like, this is laughable. And sure enough, as soon as the ball is high, Zeke is getting his crap shoved in, backpedaling all the way back into Dak. And then
Bro,
they
he got
throw like
pancaked.
they throw like a little slant route, and then your season's over within the next. Like, I just sat there and was like, is this really what they're? It gave me flashbacks of Pat McAfee and the Indianapolis Colts fake punt against the Patriots, because it was like, as you were in the sense of like, while you were watching, you're like, no way they're about to hike this football, right? Like, there is no way this is the play that they are dialing up right now. Like, this has to be a joke. What, I don't know, but that was just horrible. That was a poetic way for Dallas' season to end, in my opinion.
Like, I tweeted you guys, or not tweeted, I texted you guys right after that play, and I was hoping to God to get Harrison to respond to it. He never touched that. But I mean, like, you're an NFL offensive coordinator. I don't care if people think you're a good one, a bad one, or in between. It doesn't matter. You are an NFL offensive coordinator, and people are paying you a shit ton of money, and your season is on the line. And that's what you give me? I mean, like, I'm sorry, if I'm an owner, and he may be a great offensive coordinator, I don't know. But if I'm an owner, I'm in my feelings at that moment, your ass is fired. And you're not coming back to the locker room. And get the hell out the stadium. Walk home. I would be so mad if somebody I'm paying $500,000 a year to put that on the field.
Just made no sense.
No, it made no sense. And I guess they were trying for like the hook and ladder type play, because they threw like a 5-yard dig route.
My guy got killed.
Oh, he got blown up. I mean, he got blown up as soon as he touched the ball. So Dak got Zeke got blown up as soon as he snapped the ball because he was the center. And then the wide receiver that catches the ball gets destroyed the second he touches the ball. Doesn't even have a second to lateral the ball. Like, the whole play was just so ugly. And then all of that coming after, like, you just could not muster anything up offensively the entire game. And the only offense you have is honestly, like, it is the kicker that everybody hated last week, right? Like, the kicker that everyone wanted gone. And yeah, the first kick was missed, but it wasn't a miss, it was blocked. So
it looked like it was going to miss if it wasn't.
People say that. They do say that, but it was blocked. And then the next, then he comes out and he hits a couple more field goals behind that, and is the only reason they're even in this game. I made it a joke to you guys, and I think I saw a few other afterwards on Twitter, so I wasn't the only person that had the thought. But, like, I wonder if the kicker's sitting on the sideline, Maher is sitting over there, like, slamming his helmet and cussing out Dak, saying, run the effing ball, because he can't hit the broadside of a barn right now, and he's throwing picks and turning the ball around. Because that was something that, honestly, like, from Dak last week, seeing him come out and like, or on the sideline saying, just go for effing 2, and because your kicker's missing PATs, when you're blowing the other team out, by the way, like, you're up by a large margin, like, you clearly could afford to not have that 1 point, when he missed. So go to him and try to lift his spirits. Try to be the team leader that you're supposed to be as a quarterback. You are supposed to be the team leader, not sitting on the sideline trashing your player. But guess what? Maher wasn't saying crap on the sideline when you were throwing picks and stuff this weekend. Lost y'all the game.
I mean, how many times is it a kicker's responsibility to save a team season in the playoffs? Like, how many times do playoff games come down to a kicker winning the game for you? So, like, that's the wrong person you want to be throwing bad vibes to or knocking their confidence. Like, that is no matter how good you play, like Ohio State and Georgia is a perfect example of this. No matter how good CJ Stroud played, his season was put on the line by his kicker. So, like, that is the last person that you want to be digging into a hole and throwing dirt on top of. Like, that is the very last person you want to be doing that to, because he very well could be the person that needs to go in and save your season and keep you boys rolling. So, yeah, I didn't like that, especially, like you said, not from the quarterback standpoint, but not even just from anybody. Like, you have to understand the value of a kicker. Like, I know that they're not as seen as these ridiculous athletes like everybody else, and they're not on the field for 90% of the game like a lot of these other players, but boy, do they play a major role in the outcome of the game more times than not.
Yes, they do.
Well, the other thing, too, that I've noticed about the aftermath of this game is how quickly Cowboy fans will defend Dak Prescott. Like, pretty much every other fan base in the world, when the quarterback doesn't play big, they don't play well in a big game, they get crapped on immediately. Now, a lot of times it's not 100% deserved, but it doesn't matter what you say about Dak Prescott. The Dallas Cowboy fans defend that man like he is the savior himself. And I don't understand that. Like, he's never been an elite quarterback. He's never won a game that really mattered. And then, they're like, oh, tell me you don't know football without telling me you don't know football because Dak had the best football game of his life last week. I'm like, bro, that's a wild card round in a game that didn't really matter, that they had a talent advantage at every single freaking position on the field. Like, this game mattered. This game counted, and he played an awful football game. Now, I mean, I wasn't having the argument, but I was having a great time reading the chain.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I mean, I've never seen a fan base defend a quarterback like that. And I don't know what it is, because the Dallas Cowboy fan base, half of them hated Tony Romo, and Tony Romo was a really, really good quarterback. Very similar in the way where he would put up great regular season numbers. It just could not win the big playoff game, right? But like they were quick to turn on Romo, but they have Dak's back like nobody I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it.
The only like the closest thing is like the age-old argument in Atlanta was about Matt Ryan, but the thing is that was like the hate on him was so unjustified, because he was still
100%.
like he was absolutely throwing like darts across the field. Like, people would go after him after having a 3-touchdown, 1-interception game, and they would just try to say that one interception was the entire difference in the game when the defense would give up 35 points. The difference is this is a game where your offense scored 12 points. The other team only scored 19. It's a very, very winnable game, and your quarterback goes 1 touchdown for 2 interceptions, and almost through that I counted. I don't know if y'all were watching and saw it. I saw at least 2 others that should have been picked off. At least 2 others that should have been picked off. And then other than that, just overthrowing guys, missing targets like crazy. Like, to defend him afterwards, it just does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I think Dak he's a solid NFL quarterback. He's been in the league for quite a while at this point, but there has to come a point. There has to come a point in a player's career where you just have to kind of start questioning, like, is it time to tap out? Is it time to move on? And I asked Harrison the same question, because I was like, look, I don't watch the Cowboys religiously every Sunday. I do not care for them. I'm very vocal about that. So I'll watch them every now and then, but I'm not going to be the guy that's going to sit down on my couch and spend 2.5 hours every Sunday to watch him. But I was like, what are your thoughts on Dak Prescott at this point? Because look, he hasn't delivered anything. You've had some pretty solid teams. Like you said, Starter, they got a really good defense this year. Like, what is your thoughts on that? And his point was kind of interesting, something that I clearly didn't think about. And he's like, in years past, you've had both Amari Cooper, you've had CeeDee Lamb as of late as well, and you usually have a pretty solid tight end, and they do. Dallas Schultz is a pretty solid NFL tight end, but he's like, all you've had is CeeDee Lamb, but you don't have that other vertical threat. And CeeDee Lamb is not necessarily your top X wide receiver, go beat somebody over the top, awesome, whatever you want to call it, that type of dude. He's more of a speedster, route runner, everything else, really special athlete. So, like, they didn't have that this year, and he kind of assorted that to the offensive struggles this year. And I kind of understood it. Michael Gallup didn't have the same season this year that he had last year. He was really productive a season ago, but he really wasn't this year. So he said, that was something that he thinks Dallas needs to address in coming forward. And then maybe you see how Dak does the next year if they are able to get another wide receiver. So I thought that was interesting. But I have my own concerns as well of Dak Prescott as an outsider.
Yeah, I would say that's a valid statement too, because like when you look at this, even looking at the game this past weekend, it really does show that somewhat as well. Because I mean, you're looking, CeeDee Lamb was 10 for 117 on the game. Outside of that, nobody had more than 25 or 27 yards. The second leading receiver is 27 yards. So they basically, it was, if CeeDee's not open, you're gaining maybe 5 yards. When you get the ball, like, you're not doing anything unless it's CeeDee. CeeDee was averaging over 10 yards a catch, and he was automatic in the game, but he had nobody else to go to. So when you get late in the game, what do you do as San Francisco? Hey, I'm just going to make sure we make sure that he is locked down, and then they can't seem to get to anybody else or make anything happen. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's a valid statement overall, but at the same time, when Dak was out this year, another quarterback was able to run the system and win games.
Cooper Rush, baby.
I mean, he was winning games.
Yeah.
The one observation that I've made through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, and kind of pat us all on the back, all you gentlemen, pat you on the back as well, as we were talking about how to be successful in the NFL now, especially in the playoffs, you have to have a playmaking tight end that can make plays, right? Maybe they don't have to be superstars, but they have to be serviceable tight ends. Schultz, I mean, for the most part, he played really good, except he got really lazy on that ball at the end, and that really cost him.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at all the other teams, I mean, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, even Hayden Hurst, who was here in Atlanta, is doing a remarkable job up there. The Bills,
Goddard in Philly.
I mean, just every team that's left has a very good tight end that can make plays, and it really opens up the field. And we were talking about how with the Chargers, which is ironic because they had probably one of the best to ever do it in Gates, but they don't have that in the middle of the field, and it really exposed them in the playoffs. But all the 4 teams that are left have really, really good playmaking tight ends that are making plays all over the daggone place. And I think that was just something that kind of organically came up on our show when we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. And I've just, ever since we said that, obviously, when you say something, you start to pay attention to it more because you're like,
Yeah,
I'm either going to look really smart or look really stupid. And
Yeah.
I thought it was a really great point by us because this really played out.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
it definitely has played out. One more game I want to talk about from last week, and we kind of hinted at it a second, and then we'll transition into the picks for the coming weekend and just kind of talking about the next 2 games tomorrow. The Giants and Eagles, we kind of hinted a second ago, that was a slaughter, right? But I think all of us would sit here and say the Eagles were a way better team than the Giants going into this game. We would expect the Eagles to have a really good game against the Giants overall. They've just, as far as like the whole body of work goes for the whole season, the Giants have been so streaky back and forth, and the Eagles have been solid all season long. So to see them come in there, and I think the Eagles beat them 3 times this year, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
They've beat the Giants 3 times at this
Yeah.
point. So like nobody's surprised at that. I will say 38-7 is a pretty large margin of victory in the NFL, especially in a playoff game. But that just goes to show you that you get these 9-7 teams in there, and the Giants can't always go win a Super Bowl after going 9-7 in the year. Eli Manning's not there anymore. You don't have.
And if we're being honest, that score could have been whatever they wanted it to be.
It could have. That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
It could have got worse. It could have been much worse.
I saw a guy that had like a parlay bet of like a Hurts anytime touchdown, Miles Sanders anytime touchdown, Devontae Smith anytime touchdown, and another player anytime touchdown, and they all hit within like the first quarter. He was like, my bet was complete in the first quarter, basically. I mean, that game was wrapped up for him as far as he was concerned in the first. So it was just from the jump. Philadelphia went out there and got on top of them. So, and I think that's something that I think is a cause of concern for the 49ers going into this game, especially for someone like Brock Purdy, who's still fairly new to the NFL. And I know he played in college environments and whatnot, but man, Philadelphia fans are crazy. They are probably the craziest fans in every single sport. Like you go to any type of like playoff environment, whether it be like the Philadelphia 76ers, the Phillies, or Philadelphia Eagles, man, their fans are lunatics. They're up there with like the Bills Mafia crowd, jumping on table stuff. But those guys, they care. They bleed and die for their professional sports team. So it'll be interesting to see how Brock Purdy and the 49ers handle that type of environment. But Eagles, I'm telling you, they've looked like the best team from the start of the year, and they've continued to just look like the best team. And I feel like you can't bet against them until someone proves you wrong.
I really like the 49ers. I'm not saying they're going to win that football game, but I think if you're looking at a head coach and defensive coordinator pairing, right? Because, we obviously know Shanahan is not – I don't know. Do they have an offensive coordinator, or is he the offensive coordinator and head coach? Because I don't know.
He is.
I think he's calling plays, but I think he's got a offensive coordinator on staff.
It's probably like the Falcons with Arthur Smith,
Yeah.
Right. For the purposes of this exercise, let's just pretend that he's the offensive coordinator. And then if you look at DeMarco Ryans as the defensive coordinator, I don't know in the NFL if you have a better pairing in youthful pairing. Like, I understand that DeMarco Ryans is probably going to get a head coaching job. I don't know that he's 100% ready for it, and I don't mean any disrespect for that. I would love to see him do this for like another year or so, but I also understand that you got to strike while the iron is hot. Like on our show the other day, I kind of did like a rant on like know where you're at. And I don't know if he knows yet if he's going to be a great head coach, and he might be the next greatest head coach in the world. And I hope he is. But I would really like to see what they could do together for a couple more years. We're not going to be able to see that. It's just selfish. It has nothing to do with is he good or bad or whatever. I just think that is just a tandem that it just works remarkably well together. And it seems like they get along great. In that their play calling meshes, like what they're trying to do defensively meshes with what they're trying to do offensively. They always seem like they're on the same page. A lot of times throughout the game, you can see them talking to one another. And, I don't know what they're saying or whatever like that, but like, I love the fact that there's that communication. I'm not a 49ers fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think that is a great partnership that they've got there in San Francisco. And that being said, I think that they're going to be able to compete with anybody. I mean, the biggest question that I have is, we haven't seen anything be too much for Brock Purdy. At some point, you would have to think that something's going to have to be too much. But in the same argument, Tom Brady in his first year as a starting quarterback won the Super Bowl. So who knows?
Look, I think you're really onto something, Dan, because they like the 49ers, like when you really look at their roster, like they have a lot of good players. Like Deebo Samuel's a really
So
good
many,
player.
man. So many.
Brandon Ayuk is a really good player. Now they have Christian McCaffrey. He's a really good player.
And George
But
Kittle. I mean,
George
geez.
Kittle. So like they have really good players, but they also have players that just really fit their scheme of what they're doing. You know, when people toss up like top 5 wide receivers or top 7 wide receivers, Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk are not thrown in that list. They are not up there amongst the top like receivers of Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, etc. So they just get players that really fit their scheme really well. It's how you make a Super Bowl and go up against the Chiefs with a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo as your quarterback, because you just have guys that fill your needs precisely and what you want your
Right.
players to do and what you're trying to do offensively. And the same for defensively. Like obviously you got Nick Bosa and a bunch of other guys on that roster that are really good, but everybody on that roster fits that scheme perfectly on both sides of the football. So not only do you have a Kyle Shanahan and you have a really good defensive coordinator beside him, but you just have that the way that they have built that roster, it meshes so well perfectly as why they're so productive every single year. Like they may not look like the most dominating team across the league throughout the regular season, but man, they throw a hell of a scheme at you, and they have a lot of players that just fit that mold perfectly.
And then, like you said too, like the fact that they already pretty much had all of that, and then they do a mid to late season trade to get Christian McCaffrey, and he's finally healthy, like for the first time in like 2 years. It seems like that he's actually healthy and playing at a really, really high level. Obviously, all of that in there, and then like we kind of mentioned earlier, they do have a solid defense that doesn't allow a whole lot of points per game. I think they allow 17.5 points a game on average. But with that, this is what's going to be interesting to see. This game could go one of two ways. Obviously, both teams have a good offense and a lot of weapons around them, and they score a decent number of points each team, right? Both of these teams do, like I said, they only allow 17.5. The Eagles only allow 7 points a game in the freaking NFL.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, Jesus, man. 7 points a game in the NFL. In a 17-game season, you only allowed 7 points a game. That is called elite defense right there. I mean, just like ungodly elite defense right there. In the NFL, where all of these weapons are out there, like every single week, you're going up against like some superstar players on offense. Not one team in the NFL does not have a superstar or somebody that's like an incredible like Pro Bowl type talent on their offense. Every single team out there. And so to only allow 7 points a game, I mean, you're just absolutely not letting anyone do anything they want to do every single time they line up on the other side of the field of you. And then you pair that with a team that averages over 400 yards of total offense and 28 points a game. I mean, that is why we have sat here week in and week out talking about, hey, the Eagles are the best team in the NFL, because they have been all freaking year on both sides of the ball. They're scoring at a top level. They're putting up a lot of yards on a high level. And then their defense is by far the best, at least scoring wise, the best defense in the country. And it's not even remotely close.
Yeah, and now I want to go ahead and get on this next game, because I mean, I'm sure we'll go ahead and we'll talk about our picks later on for the Philadelphia and the 49ers
we'll get back
game.
to make picks.
We'll do the same for the Bengals and the Chiefs, which is what I want to talk about right now, because this is the one that I'm sure I'm not the only one, but this is the one that I have my eyes on for this weekend, because I love a good quarterback battle. And Joe Burrow, and you have Patrick Mahomes. For a playoff conference championship weekend, everything's like that's the type of stuff that you love to see. And believe it or not, I think this is that Patrick Mahomes has never beat Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is undefeated when playing against Patrick Mahomes. I believe that is correct. I think that is his record against Patrick Mahomes. So something interesting to keep your eye on going to that game. And it's so easy to pick the Chiefs because they've been so good for so long. I shouldn't say so long, but ever since Patrick Mahomes officially arrived into the NFL, the Chiefs have been a problem around the league just because of how high powered their offense is and what they can do. And they're just good enough defensively. Like they've never been elite defensively, but they're just good enough to get you by and go get you Super Bowl rings and whatnot. So, but man, the way Joe Burrow carries himself and all these interviews that are being released about him, the swagger that he has, the chip on his shoulder a little bit, and he doesn't wear his emotions on his sleeves by any means. He's just a calm, cool, collected guy. But when you talk to him, you could just tell he has a certain moxie about him. I am the number one guy around here. I am it. Like, I am the guy, and rightfully so. So a guy like that, I'm just glamoring over Joe Burrow right now just because I like that about a player. You know, it's kind of like the same attitude that Stetson Bennett had at the University of Georgia for so long, where like he's not necessarily telling you upright, but like, I think I'm the best there is, but he carried himself that way. You could tell like he thought he was a lot better than anybody else thought he was. Now, obviously, people think Joe Burrow is really good, but he just carries himself differently. And there's a certain swagger that, man, I just love. And I like this matchup a lot, and I think it's going to be great TV, hopefully.
You know, the Bengals were one of those teams earlier in the season during our series of shows. I was like, man, this is one of the best teams in the NFL. And then they would go out and look absolutely god awful. And then I guess I am a terrible jinx. But, you know, even more so than that, you know, like, so now the big thing is Burrowhead Stadium, right? Because everybody, like, all these people who are not involved in the game are coming out and creating all this massive, you know, message board material for the Chiefs. And like, if you're the Bengals coaching staff and Zach Taylor, you've got to look at him and go, shut the fuck up. Like, are you serious right now? Like, dude, this is an incredibly good team that we're fixing to play. And you are just like giving them an arsenal of reasons to be pissed off at us. And, you know, listen, I think the Bengals are a very good team. They've got a lot of great players, but like, shut the fuck up. I mean, they've made it so. Oh my, I cannot believe the freaking mayor of Cincinnati is out there saying that he's Joe Burrow's or that he's Patrick Mahomes' daddy. Like, oh my God. I mean,
yeah, that's a little much for me. I'm not going to lie. That is a little much. I will give you this. So, like, I have two sides of what I'm about to say. The first side is what you don't want to do is you don't want a team that is technically favored in the game, right? You have the Chiefs favored at minus 1.5. You don't want a team that is favored in the game to like have this narrative that they're the underdog. Like, you don't want
Georgia, for crying out loud.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Our boys said we're going 7-5.
You don't make a team that's so dangerous feel like they're looked at as the underdog, because now they've got, like, they were going to go out there and do their best to win the game anyways, but now they feel like they've got something they have to prove. Like, now they've been challenged, like their manhood has been challenged, basically. Like, you don't do that, first of all. The other side of it is this too, and everybody's been talking about, like, I saw one thing today, they were saying, like, they were asking people publicly on Twitter, they were like, I mean, does anybody else just really want to see the Bengals lose because their fans are so cocky and the team seems so cocky? Yeah, the fans might have been a little over cocky. The fans might have been a little over cocky. I'll say that. The team has not been over cocky. Joe Burrow has not been over cocky. I think Joe Burrow has to carry himself that way as like an elite level player. And like, it's okay to be out there and like answer questions in the way that an elite level player should be doing, in the sense of, I am good. I have no doubt that I am one of the best quarterbacks in the league. That's fine with me. That doesn't bother me. And do I want to see them lose? Absolutely not, because I kind of love this Bengals team right now. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to win this game, but I'm not sitting here going, I want them to lose because they're getting too cocky. No, dude, they're good. It's like this game that we are about to watch. To me, it's what we have been seeing the past couple of seasons, the Chiefs and Bills. This game's about to be elite. And if Joe Burrow can go in there in Kansas City and win this game from now on and for the next couple of seasons, the AFC runs through Cincinnati, because they are going out here and they are outperforming the Bills multiple times now. This would mean they're outperforming Kansas City multiple times, like 2 seasons in a row, and making back-to-back Super Bowls. The AFC goes through Cincinnati if they win this game.
Now, look, I love Joe Burrow, but I will say I despise any and all Ohio fans, like across the entire sport. Ohio State fans, can't stand them, man. They were unbearable in my Twitter mentions for a long time. I mean, muting every single Twitter thread I had that involved Ohio State, because, man, they were ruthless. Cincinnati fans the same way. Morgan's grandpa is a huge Cincinnati and Ohio State fan, and he emails me all the time talking smack with Ohio State and Cincinnati.
Emails you?
Yes, he can. He does not have a phone that texts, so he emails me. He communicates with me through email. Yes, so that's a relationship I have with him. Funny. So he's emailing me like who day all the time and whatnot, and I'm sick and tired of it, man. I hope they lose. I cannot stand Ohio fans. Like Cavalier fans, while LeBron was there, couldn't stand them. Like I said, Ohio State fans, and now Cincinnati Bengals fans, like all around, up and down, hate them. And I have no problem at all rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I kind of do hope that Cincinnati loses a little bit.
You know, so like, look, all jokes aside, and I know I was trying to be a little bit funny on that last one, but my biggest concern for the Chiefs has been the same concern I have all year long. Jonathan, what has been my concern about the Chiefs all year
They
long?
can't run the ball, Dan.
That's right. They cannot run the ball. And like they took the wrong running back. They should have taken Swift. Imagine Swift on that football team. They would be unstoppable. But I mean Pacheco or however you say it, is it Pacheco? Is that how you say his name? The running back?
I don't know. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean he's doing okay.
Yeah,
I mean he's doing all right, but they don't have a very serious running game. And on the flip side of that, the Bengals do. The Bengals do have a really good running game.
Yeah.
And Mixon, he is knocking the hell out of people. He will get you the tough yards. If you need, I mean, one of the things that we love being Georgia fans is at the end of the game, we can go on the Dejan death march, right? And we know the game is over. Like we will salt that game away. I don't think the Chiefs can do that. And I really think, and I know they've showed video of Mahomes running around and he looks healthy and he doesn't look like he's limping. 100% awesome. I hope that's the case.
That dude is going to be shot up with so many different things, like cortisone shots and all kinds of stuff before that game. He's not going to feel a daggum thing.
But the strength is not going to be there in that ankle. The strength is not going to be there. But anyway, I do have a real serious concern for the Chiefs that they're not going to be able to do that. And they also don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. And that hasn't really bitten them a lot this season because they got other guys to make a play. I mean, they expected McCole Hardman to be Tyreek Hill, and he's not
probably still
been able
this
to
week as well. Well, he's been injured for a
he's
while.
He's
been playing well.
I'm not saying it's because of a talent.
No,
I'm just saying he hasn't been able to duplicate that level of production.
Look,
and he's still out this week probably too.
Yeah. Keeping the conversation going, though, from a little bit ago, Dan, is, we talked about these elite tight ends are what has been kind of carrying these teams, and it's what things have kind of boiled down to. You certainly give the edge there to Kansas City over Cincinnati
100%.
because, heck, have the best one in the NFL.
By the way, he's listed as questionable. I don't see there's a situation where he doesn't play this week, but he is listed as questionable, by the way.
Kelce?
Yeah. Travis Kelce's listed as questionable.
He'll play.
He'll play. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that's something to
just give him some of Michael's secret stuff. They'll be all right.
Just give him a little bit of something there. But no, I agree. This is a team that but to go back at what you just said too a second ago, Dan, overall, I mean, Kansas City statistically runs the ball better than the Bengals do on the season. They have averaged about 20 yards more per game on the ground. But
that's true.
That is true. They are averaging 115 compared to 95 for the Bengals. But the difference is this, that they do have a good running game overall, like as a whole, when you balance it with the fact that Mahomes is out there throwing for 300 yards a game. The difference is I still agree with what you said, though, that if you got to have a death march, that's not the team to do it. They don't have the running back that's going to just run through you and make it that's where Joe Mixon might only have 45 yards carrying in the game, but you get in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left, and he'll grind out 20 yards for you just running through people versus the other side of the ball. They don't have that. That's where I think the difference is in the running game. But as far as statistically speaking, Kansas City does run the ball better as a whole in a game, just not necessarily in the last 5 minutes of a game when you really need it. When that's when you're leaning on it. I wouldn't trust Kansas City in that moment of the game. No. But I agree with you in the sense of, if it comes down to it, Joe Mixon's definitely the guy to do that on the other side of the ball.
And it's not to say that it can't be done. It's just I just feel more confident,
more difficult.
Yeah,
exactly.
Chance,
Yes. If you were going to say one of these two teams is going to have the ball with 3 minutes left and they need to grind the clock because they're only up by 4 points or something like that, or 3 points, and they need to make sure the other team doesn't get the ball, which running back and which team are you going to put money on that has a better chance of doing it? And at the end of the day, I'd say at least 75% of the people are going to look at it and say, I mean, Joe Mixon's the running back, and the Bengals have the offense to do that.
I think their backup is Pirine too, right? And Pirine's had some really, really big
when
games
Mixon went out. When Mixon went out, he went off.
Yeah.
I mean, he went off when Mixon was out. So they have a good 1-2 punch, which is something that especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being out pretty much all season, whenever he got hurt, I don't even remember at this point. They definitely don't have that in Kansas City. They don't have the 1-2 guy.
A random fact, Samaje Perine, one of the most unlucky guys in the world. He was the NCAA single game record holder for the most yards in the history of a game for 1 week.
Yep.
Poor guy.
You brought that up one time too, didn't you? Because after he had the game.
So. I think I just have to say that every time.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good stat.
It's a pretty good.
All right, let's jump into this. We've gone 40 minutes. Let's go ahead and get our picks in. Let's go back to the other game first. Let's go back to the Eagles versus San Francisco, and the Eagles are a 2.5-point favorite. Go ahead.
Oh, starting with me.
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right. Philly, baby. I'm rocking with Philly. As I said earlier, they've just been that team where it feels like you can't bet against them until someone takes them out. And in the playoffs, they've continued to look dominant. You're going in Philly. I don't really like that situation where Brock Purdy going into an environment like that. All your chips are in, everything's on the line, season on the line. I get that he's been productive in the playoffs so far for San Francisco and productive in general, but just you got a more experienced team. As you said, they're only allowing 7 points per game. That's ridiculous. And with San Francisco only scoring 19 points against Dallas's defense, now they're going up against Philadelphia's defense. That doesn't exactly have me feeling good for the 49ers in that situation. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Philadelphia.
All right, so one of my best friends, Andrew Steinberg, is his birthday yesterday. He's from Camden, New Jersey. Huge Eagles fan. So I know just for him, I'll say the Eagles are going to win this game. But I really
Fly, Eagles fly.
I really, really think the 49ers can make this a game, guys. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
doubt.
they don't, but I
Yeah.
think they can. But the Eagles win.
All right, so I'm gonna say the Eagles win this game because, and this is my reason for it, because once again, like what Jonathan just said a second ago, Brock Purdy and San Francisco really struggled against Dallas last week. And Dallas, I mean, they have a good defense, but they do not have near as good of a defense as the Eagles, allowing 7 points a game. And Brock Purdy is going to have to bounce back after having a rough week, or the team not playing incredible offensively, having to go back and he needs to have a good game against an even better defense at this point. And while I've loved the Brock Purdy story, while it has been incredible to see Mr. Irrelevant come out there and lead his team this far in the playoffs and see how well he has played in all of these games, last week kind of makes you wonder. And this is going to be the deciding factor of is this what's kind of going on right now? Is this one of those situations where starting quarterback goes down and you get a Jimmy G type situation with New England where he goes off for 4 games while Tom Brady's suspended, and all of a sudden the world just thinks they're this God's gift to the world, incredible quarterback, and they go out and get this insane contract in the offseason via trade because of that. I think it's too early to say that he's that type of quarterback yet, and this game is going to really, really challenge him because the inexperience of a rookie quarterback going on the road, they are on the road against the Eagles, it's going to be a very tough environment and a very tough defense to play against, and I don't know that he's going to have the type of game needed to keep up with Jalen Hurts and the Eagles in this game when they still score 30 points a game almost as well, on top of not allowing but 7 points a game. So I'm going Eagles, and I think it's Eagles by 10.
That's the longest pick I've ever heard in my life.
It was worth it, though. It was worth it. Eagles by 10.
You brought it, but it was quality.
I brought it. It was quality. Now go ahead and let's see what you got for Bengals and Chiefs. Chiefs minus 1.5.
Yeah,
Chiefs
I might be alone. Listen, guys, I like the Chiefs. I have. It's been one of my fun teams, but I got the Bengals. I think the Bengals are going to win this football game. I think Mahomes' ankle is going to be a factor. I really like the Chiefs. I will not be upset if they win. I just think the Bengals are going to win this football game.
I'll just put it this way. I hope by the end of Sunday, I'm sitting on my phone cooking up the meanest email ever and hitting send to Mr. Thomas up in Ohio. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm going with the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, I just enjoyed watching him, and I think it's just a guy, again, 2 really, really good quarterbacks. But Mahomes, man, he's something special as well. Just that Chiefs team in general. It's just a lot of offensive firepower. Just for some reason, my guts tell me that the Chiefs are going to win this one. And honestly, no matter who it is, I just hope it's Philadelphia representing the NFC, because I think because regardless of who you get in the AFC, that's going to be a really good Super Bowl. If you can get Philadelphia in there, that's going to be a really entertaining Super Bowl. So that's really all I'm hoping for, because all this, I'm just hoping for that when it comes to Super Bowl Sunday, there's an entertaining game on my television. It's not whatever the heck it was with New England and the Rams a few years ago. Boo, that sucks. So that's all I'm hoping for. But yeah, I'm going to take Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Bengals on this one as well, and I think it's gonna be a type of game that we've had, because I mentioned this earlier, and I stand by it. I think this is the type of game that's gonna be like the Bills versus Kansas City, where whoever has the ball last, that's the team that's gonna win the game. I genuinely think it's gonna come down to something like that. This is the 1.5 point spread is accurate. It's such a thin margin. Both of these teams are incredible. I just think the Bengals are gonna have the edge in the end. And no matter which team makes it to the Super Bowl, it's going to be a good matchup if they're playing against the Eagles. Or honestly, even if they're playing against San Francisco, you'll still have a good Super Bowl matchup. All four of these teams are really, really good football teams. So I'm excited about it. We'll touch base on it again. Next week is the Pro Bowl, then the Super Bowl the week after that. So that's all I got for this week, boys. Y'all got anything else?
No, yeah, we'll just be previewing the Super Bowl next week, so that'll be fun. We'll release an episode, of course, next week for that, and then we'll get to talk about after the Super Bowl, and then we'll get to talk about some other sports. So that's exciting, getting to roll in some fresh content out, but it's going to be sticking around. That's the only thing I would say is that we're going to keep producing content after the NFL season ends. So just an important thing to remember.
Hey, if you guys are Braves fans, I would love to talk a lot of baseball. I love talking baseball. I don't have anybody to talk baseball with. So
I don't
if
know.
you guys
What
are
do you think,
in for
Dan?
baseball, let us know.
What do you think, Dan? You think I'm a Braves fan?
No, I'm talking about the audience.
Just kidding. You think I'm a Braves fan, dadgummit? Come on, man.
All right, that's going to do it for this week. Like you said, stay tuned with us in the next few weeks as we got some big shows for the next 2 weeks, and then we will branch out a little bit further as well. But we look forward to it. Y'all have a great weekend and enjoy those games tomorrow.